Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain, joined tonight by Coach Kenny Simpson, and our guest of the evening is Coach Beau Collins. All Arkansas is taking charge of the house tonight. It's kind of, I feel outnumbered. Okay, I'm a little bit of an outsider here. Coach Collins, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, man?
My name's Beau Collins. I have been coaching for the last 17 years in Northwest Arkansas and Northeast Oklahoma. Spent several years at a small 4A school, Lincoln, Arkansas, as the DC, and then a year at Stillwell, Oklahoma as the head coach, and have recently taken a job back at my alma mater in Northwest Arkansas, coaching O-line and being a junior high OC, moving a little closer to home in a program that's close to my heart was an opportunity I couldn't turn down.
Close to my heart. I don't know about going home. I don't know if I could do it. I feel like the expectations would be so high. I guess it's okay that you're not the head coach, but it would be very strange for me to try to go back to Lone Grove and be the head ball coach. I wonder if it would be self-imposed, like, thing. You know what I mean? I guess, does that make sense? Like,
I do. There was a lot of, anxious feelings about how's it going to be and how's it going to work out? What's the expectations of me coming back here? But we're a summer in and 2 weeks into the season, and so far I'm pretty happy. It's been good, and I'm feeling good about where I'm at.
That's awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you jumping on the show tonight. Kind of a topic that you and I last year on staff got to deal with. Some tough losses, and that's really what we'll talk tonight. And tough losses, I feel like, come in every shape and form. We originally were to talk about blowout losses, but you get into blowout games, and you got wins, you got losses, and losses exist in different realms. I mean, it's just as bad to lose by 1 sometimes as it is by 50. Worse sometimes because you were actually in the game and had a shot, right? Maybe it comes down to one coaching choice or whatever. But yeah, man, I think it's gonna be a great episode. And once again, we just are really glad to have you on the show. Coach Simpson, how was your part of Arkansas?
Oh, it's doing well up here. Right now we're 2-0, and so that's when you haven't lost, things are good. But as we're going to find out with today's theme, I guess, for our show, that very very few teams go undefeated. So that at some point you're going to hit a rocky patch, whether that's in the middle of a game or maybe one game or even a couple of games. So right now enjoying it, but understanding. I've lived long enough to know that just because you won doesn't mean you played really well. And so there are things that we've got a lot to work on and that we're trying to get better at. But up in this area, at least it's not 1,000 degrees. It's much cooler last week. So a lot more fun for our kids to play in. And, it's the time of year right now where from now till February, there's football on every weekend. And so if you're a football fan, this is kind of that time. I really dread, like, the summer. I enjoy what I do, but I dread there's nothing. I don't watch baseball, so I don't really care about that. So there's nothing to watch. So now, from pretty much, I feel like Tuesday, is it MAC action on Tuesday or whatever it is? So you can watch football Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we play on Friday, Saturday, pretty soon you got Sunday coming. So it's, to me, this is the time of year where, man, it's football season.
Yeah, no, I agree. The temperatures coming down a little bit was beautiful. Try to make a resurgence here at the end of this week. It is the 3rd of September, right? That's the right month?
It is. I'm literally about 2 weeks away from getting candy corn. Like, that's my favorite snack to eat on. And then, it's the fall. Some people think it's just a Halloween candy. I would say that it is a fall candy.
There you go. Nope, not looking forward to candy corn. That's not my bag, but I mean, I feel you. Having a target, right? Just have to handle one season at a time and get back to your candy corn. But yeah, football every night of the week has been beautiful. Just getting to watch our favorite teams, man. There's nothing like it. Like, you coach your team and you got to deal with the X's and O's, but man, it sure is nice to just watch someone else's hard work come to fruition, you know? Like, I don't know. I've been a Sooners fan for a long time, so watching them decimate a team and get another shutout for the first time in years, that was beautiful.
Yeah, it was Arkansas State. Yeah, so it's there from around this way.
I know. I feel bad for you guys.
Well, I'm
Hopefully,
not. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm not like an anti-Arkansas State fan, but that was we had some lopsided. Was it 81-7? Oregon beat somebody, and then Oklahoma 73-0. Don't get me wrong. I like football, but I like when the conference football games start. When like you're watching good teams play. No offense to those two teams that lost.
no,
But
they had a role, right? That they signed a contract. They knew what they were getting into.
I think it was 1.3 million, I believe, is what Oklahoma paid
yeah.
State to come up and get whipped. So.
Yeah, and their head coach, I believe, is Butch Jones, if I'm not mistaken. We got a little history with him because he was at Tennessee when we went up there and knocked him out up there and so he kind of had some tough words for our kids about celebrating a really, really tough game. We talk about tough losses. He took one that day, and I don't think he handled it too well. So this weekend he took another tough one, and it wasn't very close.
I found that most coaches we're not real good with losses. I mean, it's just. Well, I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today. So, but I don't think you really want to get good at losing. I don't think that's possible. It's just how to maybe mitigate the damage.
Yep. Well, we will jump right into it then. Coach, why don't you share some other ways that a coach can make things simple for his staff and his athletes?
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com. Awesome, Coach. Thanks for those things. Let's jump right into part one here, and that's dealing with defeat as a coach. So like you said just a few moments ago, and that is not all coaches are good at losing, and I don't know that I ever want to be one that's good with losing. I think there's some differences there in being a good sport and not making a butt of yourself after taking a loss, regardless if it was a blowout or a 1-point loss. So there are ways I think you have to handle as a coach that are better or worse than others. That doesn't mean you have to enjoy it. Some coaches say they hate losing more than they love winning, and that is definitely a way to coach. Probably people that come from very successful programs feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first, and Beau, you can kind of pick up on this, but there's not really a way to say, hey, this is how you should lose. We can all say what we should do, but the emotion you feel when you put so much into something and it doesn't come to fruition for one reason or another, and whether it's some games you kind of go in with an idea, hey, we're a little outmatched right here. We're going to give it our best shot, and the chips fall where they may. And I don't really consider those to be losses stink. But those aren't like those just gut-wrenching losses. Those are, you gave the best you could. There are probably some things you could have done different. And those are kind of easier to move on. The ones that sting are the ones that you thought you were at least equal to the team you were playing, or maybe you thought you were better than the team you were playing, or maybe you didn't perform really well as a team. And you lost a close one. So a game that could have been won that didn't go your way. We had two of those back-to-back last year for us, ended up costing us the playoff. We lost one by 1 point on a blocked field goal at the end of a game. We're in the red zone 2 times and didn't score. We lost one where we're tied 14-14. Conference champs, they were undefeated. We fumbled the 5-yard line in the fourth quarter going in to take the lead. And so those are gut-wrenching losses. And what you got to realize first as a coach is every eye in the stadium is on you in that moment. How you handle that is going to be seen by everybody. And I mean everybody, all your players, all your parents, and here's the other one, all your admin, everyone that hired you and brought you in that moment, they're watching how you handle this. Because as bad as you feel, those kids feel horrible too. And so I'll just give a couple of things not to do, and that's and I'm probably because I've done these things. One is take it personal. Find someone to blame other than yourself, whether that be the officiating, whether that be the circumstances, whether that be a player or a coach on your staff. All of that might be true, if we're being honest. All of that might be true. You might have gotten screwed by the officials and it did cost you a game. That's happened. Yep. You might have had a coach on the other side of the ball that wasn't as prepared as he could have been and it cost you. That could be true. You might have had a quarterback or other position play really bad and it cost your team. All of that could be true. In that moment, it's not. In that moment, it's you. And you take the heat and you fall on the sword, and that's what you do. Because your job is to protect those 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids and make sure they're ready to move forward. Because the last thing you want to do is to start off with blaming and excuses, because that's what they're going to do. The second thing you can't do is you can't lose the forest for the trees, especially if you're a high school coach. I don't know who's listening to our podcast, but I'm assuming most coaches are probably in the high school world, maybe junior high or even youth level. Your job is not just to win games. Like, that's not your complete job. I mean, you will get fired if you don't win enough of them, but your job really is to teach people how to deal with difficult situations. And if you can't do that, how in the world are your kids going to do that? I'll give one more thing. I'll pass it over to Beau. The third thing is you can't let it linger more than it needs to linger. It's going to sting. It's going to be horrible. I've had those terrible weekends. But I've also had those times where you got to go home and you have some family event, maybe Saturday, like a kid's game or a birthday party, or you have something coming up on Sunday. And man, you can't let what happened then ruin everything else. And that's really easy to say, and it's really hard to do. You got to figure out a way to leave that at the office, even if you got to stay a little longer that evening before you come home, and not bring it home to everybody else. And that's easier for me to sit here and say, but it's hard to do because you feel that punch right in the gut and just feel sick all weekend. But I'd give you the caution, especially a young coach, don't let that linger any more than it needs to.
Yep. Coach Collins.
I think there's that big difference in those games. You're going to lose. You've got to, at the outset, this team is superior to anything we can put out on the field. And you go out there and you give it your best shot, but I think you try to build up expectations or set goals that are maybe more, we want to achieve these things. This is what we're looking for this week, effort-based, and maybe even to the point of talking to the team all week long about our goals this week is to move the ball, maybe fix this play, and maybe focus less on the outcome and more on the product that you're putting out there, the things that you can achieve. Those games that are real close, the ones that come down to that last drive in the fourth quarter. I think a long way back to one of my coaches that I had in high school and kind of a mentor to me, telling me that I've got to be calm enough to be the calm in the middle of the storm. Like, they need to look at me and see confidence, whether we're up 3 or 4 scores or we're down 3 or 4 scores. They need to look at me and see the steadfast, always the same confidence, because that's going to affect how the players believe they should behave. And once you get them to that knowledge that no matter what happens, that coach isn't rattled or it hasn't taken coach out of the game yet, you're going to give them the confidence to play better. And you may still lose that game that you're supposed to, but I think it will look better once those players have that belief that it hasn't phased you and that you're still going into the game just like you did last week on a team you should beat or you're supposed to beat.
Yeah, I think what you don't want is your kids to feed off of like a fear of losing. And if everybody's honest with themselves, unless you're just an idiot, you have a fear of losing. Like that's just normal, but you can't feed into that fear where it kind of cripples you in those moments. And a lot of times I kind of feel like a duck, like we're like above the water, everything looks nice. Man, underneath the water, because you, as a coach, I'm a guy that thinks through 1,000 scenarios. I know what could go wrong, but you have to play the confidence. You got to want your kids to play with confidence. And like you mentioned, coach, you got to be the calm in the storm. I thought that was great. I mean, you have to be that, or your kids are not going to perform on those moments, and you may lose a game. I mean, sometimes when it's a one-play game, man, it's a flip a coin. Sometimes they make the play, sometimes you make the play. But what you never want is for your kids to play with fear or feel like you're nervous and letting it get to you.
Yep. Coach, I really picked up on when you were talking about, you can't lay blame at other people's feet. And that's another reason why I just live this extreme ownership thing. And because there's a pretty good chance that whatever the situation was, except for the refs, and you can even blame yourself there, you probably had a piece in that puzzle of that cause. If it's the kid fumbled, you didn't work that drill enough. If it was linemen pulling the wrong way, you didn't put enough stress on them throughout the week for them to know in a big moment, which I don't think you can ever practice that this game, this snap wins or loses the game. I don't know that you can actually practice that, but you didn't turn up the intensity enough on them throughout the week. When it comes to bad refs, sometimes just the way that you've treated refs over time or that game, if they just were harassed the whole time, I mean, you can go back to your fans even, right? But what have you let your fans get away with in your during your tenure as a head coach there? So I think a lot of those things that we want to kind of say, well, my quarterback didn't make the right read, my guard missed a block, the ref threw a flag that didn't exist. Like a lot of that you can still tie back to yourself, even if it wasn't in that exact moment that it cost you, So you're right on with just eat that loss. What does that say? I in loss and we in victory and move on in life. And Coach, Collins, you said about making adjustments, and that is the second part to our episode here, and that's what adjustments do you make that week? And so, Coach Collins, I'll start with you here. That you take a loss, whether it be by 1 point or a blowout, and maybe you do things differently here. Different losses aren't the same. Not every loss is the same. Period. Coach Simpson already talked about. Sometimes it's a predicted loss. You're outmanned at every single position, and you're not going to go win that game. So, how do you make adjustments moving on after that week?
I think you take one of those big losses. Maybe it's the expected loss or a big blowout loss. When you sit down as a team, whether it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever you do film, that's probably not the time to tear those kids down and start pointing out all the ways we screwed up. And there's probably plenty of them. The kids have probably they know. And there's no use, especially when you're just outmatched to beat that dead horse. There's probably not a lot productive can come out of pointing out how your right tackle got whipped 6 plays in a row, and that's right. The reason you couldn't run the ball. I think you go into that film session finding the things we did right. You might pick out 1 or 2 specific things that maybe we screwed up. It wasn't that they were so much better. And you point out those mistakes because those are easy to say, hey, we did the wrong thing here and we can fix that. And then point out some things they did good. Try to find something to build some confidence back in those teams, especially if you're trying to go into a week where it's going to be a competitive game. You can't have that hanging over the kid's head about we just took this L, and then we come in Monday morning and coach tears us down about everything we screwed up and how we got beat by these kids. And you set a tone for the whole week. I think you got to be positive, and try to build a foundation of encouragement or a foundation of confidence going into that next week. And, that may start during that loss. At some point during that expected loss or blowout loss, you may shift from, hey, I'm playing my ones and we're trying to win this game, to we all recognize this game is out of reach. And now is valuable time for these sophomores, these backup kids, to go in and get game experience that they won't see in a competitive ball game. And yeah, they may not be successful. We may go 3 or 4 plays and punt, but they're going to get game reps running our offense against an opponent that wants to beat us, that's trying to stop them. And I think that could be a valuable thing too. And then those kids get to see themselves on film and have a little breakdown of it.
Absolutely. Coach Simpson.
Yeah, all that's good stuff for sure. I was going to say, first thing is you kind of have to have your kids have to know that there's a relationship between you and them that transcends winning and losing. And so that's got to start way before the season starts, and that's one of those deals where the kids will know, like if you treat them different, and I don't just mean like be upset or depressed. I mean, if you treat them different after you win than after you lose, you have a problem. Like in my opinion, that's like a flashing red signal that should let you know that I'm using these kids for what they can do for me and not the other way around. So I think you have to have kind of the mindset of, whether we win or lose, I'm excited to come to work on Monday and work with you guys. And I'm excited to help you get better. When we win, I hammer our kids in film. And Coach kind of mentioned it. Like when we win, I like when we win. I love when we won. We won like a week ago. We won and we had 5 turnovers. And I was like, that's like the coach's fantasy. I can rip into our kids and we still won. And so that's when you win, you can get away with a little bit more in film. And like Coach mentioned, when you don't win, and I'm a heated blowout, so I'm gonna handle a close one. It's like when you don't handle a close one, we're gonna focus on a lot of the positive stuff. So what are the things we did well? But we are gonna be honest. We're not gonna rip kids apart, and we're not gonna just pick the 1 or 2 plays, but we're gonna find 5 or 6 plays generally that deal with effort. Where maybe it was in the first quarter, maybe it was on the backside of the punt block, whatever it was. Just we're gonna find 5 or 6 plays where we can point out kids that can handle it and say, look, we weren't given the greatest effort here on these plays and we were 1 play away, or we were 1 this away. Then we're going to probably show 5 or 6 plays where we were 1 block away, maybe 1 tackle away. We missed a tackle. We were 1 cut by the running back, 1 read by the quarterback. And that's not to lay blame on our kids, it's to give them confidence. And we want to give you confidence how close you were to winning and how important all this stuff is. Especially that's the adjustments you're going to make that week. And then we're going to take those things we showed in film and immediately on Monday, we're going to have that being done in our individual period. We call it a fix it period. So we're going to go in, we're going to deal with the loss. We're moved on, but these are things we got to fix because they directly led to us losing. So now let's go out and drill them. And so we do that period whether we win or lose. So it's not like we only do it after a loss. But after a loss, that period is going to carry way more weight than it does after a win. You can get on them all you want after they win. It's sometimes hard to get their attention. But after they lose, you have their attention. And so that first 10, 15 minutes on Monday, that's your chance to correct some things with their full attention. So a lot of times for us, we had those 2 losses I mentioned. We came back with probably one of the biggest wins of school history. We beat a team that was across the river from us. That was a huge game for us. Well, our kids showed resiliency because we fixed our issues, but we didn't throw out the kids. Like we hate you, we can't do that. No, we just said, okay, let's keep getting better. But I think it all comes back to that first point I made. If you haven't built the relationship with the kids on the front end, those tough losses can fracture and kill a program. And so be careful as a young coach that you are building a relationship that transcends winning and losing, or when you lose, and if you're a coach, at some point you will, that 1 loss will turn into 2 to 3 to 4 to now you got to go find another job. But really good coaches are able to take losses, tough moments, teach people, and move forward.
I think in the perfect timing here of speak extreme ownership and discuss it, but I think it's a great time. These blowout losses, these close losses, they're an excellent time for you to troubleshoot yourself and go back and find, what did we do wrong? Sure, a kid's going to miss a block here and there, but why did we run a play to him if he's have a history of missing that block? Why did we call that play here? Right? Maybe it's a key moment. Maybe it's a situational football. Communication with your staff. I don't mind saying it. We took a pretty bad loss the other day at the 9th grade level, and we played 2 different games, 2 different nights, and the first one was a close loss. Man, we really probably could have had it. We had some fumbles. We had some stuff on the field that didn't go our way, right? As coaches, we were trying to solve those problems, and It was a very good fought ball game right to the last whistle, and it was a good one. We felt better about that one, I guess, because we stuck with a team that traditionally just puts it on people. We came back the next night with our second varsity team, and they ran us out of their stadium. And that was when it really showed, like, we were flawed the first night. It just wasn't broadcasted to everyone. But our communication fell apart. Instead of problem solving on the sidelines with each other, like, hey, I see you got, it was just, we kind of just yelled at each other, like, hey, here's the issue. Great. We see the issue. Do you have a resolution? Can you, if I'm struggling as the DC, do you have a thing that will help me be successful here? Because if they're 11 or just kicking our 11 in the teeth and running by us, like at some point, that's not even a problem you can solve, right? So that communication issue there, we've been in close games and had it go south because of kicking tees. Me and Coach Collins dealt with that last year, right? And it's like, where is the stinking kicking tee? And at first it was like, okay, well, we just went for it. Maybe we even got it. Didn't matter, 4th down or something. Great. Or go for 2. Great. That's the option. But where it came was then like the kickers got confused. And now the kid who should be out there in an actual punting situation is letting the quarterback go out, and we're trying to fake it on like a 4th and 20 when we just needed to punt the dang ball. And then we got a 4th and 2 and we want to fake it, and the wrong punter runs out because that whole it started with kicking tees, and it turned into like the real punter didn't know when he was supposed to be on the field or not. And once again, it goes back to coach's communication and owning that part of the game in that situation. The last one, just adjusting scheme on the fly. There's a time when you have drawn up every play you've seen them run. You've drawn up what part of your system fits that best. Here's the calls we can auto check to, even if that's what, if they want to come out in wildcat or a heavy or tackle over. Guys, kids, here's what we're going to do. But now when they do something you didn't expect, they've never shown one of those, so you didn't waste time prepping for it because you needed to stop these other things. Were you good at changing your scheme on the fly, right? Could you communicate that to the kids? Like, hey, here's this very simple thing. I want to install this and it looks just like that, but I'm going to put you in a different place. You're going to do the same job. I just want you to change your alignment here. Can you do that on the fly? Can you think while the chaos is on the field and the kids are playing, can you be thinking? And so I think, we get into situations where maybe even something that should have been a respectable loss turns into a blowout because we aren't good at doing those things. So I think just any loss is a great time for you to go back, and wins are too. And I'm not saying victories aren't a time to do that. But Coach, like you just said, you get your kids' attention after a loss. You get your own attention sometimes. You get your staff's attention after you take a loss like that. So it's a great time to just kind of pick yourself apart and start making corrections on your own. So that's the adjustments I want to make that week is, where did we screw up in play calling?
I would say that most games are lost more than one. Like, I think there are more games as a coach, if you affect it, it was probably more in a negative way than a positive way. And so, like you're saying, Daniel, going back and looking at all of the different things that I did wrong, which is tough. That's hard to do objectively, without being too hard on yourself or maybe too nice to yourself, whatever the word is. But you have to do that as a coach, because a lot of times, like you mentioned, it was a coaching error, where this happened or that happened or that happened. And there's a lot of things you could fall back on as excuses, but how much of that can you fix and move forward?
Yep. And that kind of segues us right into the last one. And that's just, how do you move on quickly? And I'll open here. And I think it depends on the loss. There's one of the things that I learned from my mentor, Kenny Ridley down in Southern Oklahoma. We took a pretty bad loss last year to Ada, and I think it was 55-0, which we thought was 70-0. Coach Collins had to look up the scores earlier. We were having a conversation about it, but Ada Cougars put it on us pretty good. They dominated us at 11 positions on both sides of the ball, and we kind of didn't know where to go from there. As a staff, it was a melding point for us, and we had to figure out how to move forward. And Coach Ridley told me, throw the film away. Don't watch it. They took that beating. You didn't have answers then. Rewatching it now, you're not going to do anything. You can watch it and figure out where your scheme was broken. Where did they, Coach Simpson, you talk all the time about just using formations to break a defense. Where did they break your defense? Where did they make the thing that you've been teaching go wrong? Or is it the scheme altogether? Sometimes you got to look at it like, if you're an attacking defense and you want to blitz all the time, maybe blitzing ain't the way. You might have to, look at those adjustments, but throw that film away. The kids don't need to see it. Get what you can out of it and move on. And then just discussing your mistakes as a coach. Once again, I kind of go back to what I said a moment ago, but if it is a close loss or, a respectable loss and you come in, it's just real tough to take it because maybe you should have won or you knew it was going to be a kind of a tooth and nail thing going in, but don't be afraid to show the kids where you screwed up. Look, guys, right here, the clock is running. I know you guys are trying to get set to, spike it or whatever, just save a timeout. You can't get there. I let too much clock burn off. I should have called timeout. I should have had, faith in whatever. Instead of punting this away, maybe we should have gone for it on a 4th and 4 and just trusted my defense. It could have gone either way, and I picked the wrong way. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and let them know we're humans. And I know a lot of coaches are going, there's no way in hell I'm talking to my kids like that. They need to think that we're miniature gods and that we're the greatest football coach that ever existed, and what we say is the highway. But I'm just a firm believer in like being completely honest and transparent and let them kids know, look, man, we screwed it up. It wasn't on you. Because if not, they may think it is on them. And now, like you said, Coach Simpson, they're getting in the next week and they're like, I don't trust myself to make that throw, or I don't trust the running back to hand this off. I'm going to try to pull it and make something happen on a crazy play or something, and you stacking losses. And I can't remember who the coach was. I think it was Coach K out at Duke that said, kids aren't afraid of losses. Kids hate losing streaks. So the last thing you want to do is let them start piling up, because now you do lose the kids, right? Coach Simpson, I'll go ahead and let you talk here.
Oh, let me get it again, Daniel. It was how do
you move on quickly? Yeah.
Well, one, the kids are going to move on way quicker than you are. By the time they roll in there Monday, they're over it. And so those losses sit with you as a coach for a while. They sit with me for a long time. But in my experience, the kids are usually moved on by the next time y'all meet, if that's Sunday or Monday, whenever that is. But they come in with you, they've kind of moved on. And so you got to move on quickly with them. You mentioned it, you can't let one loss turn into 2. Learn the lessons and try to move on quickly. Feed off the kids' energy a little bit there. Feed off their energy. They're going to recover quicker than you are as a coach. A lot of times you've already gone through the film and you've already kind of moved on. You mentioned it. If it's a blowout loss, move on quick. Just don't even, do what you got to do with that film and then move on. If it's a 1-point loss, try to find 5 to 10 plays that you can show your kids, that you can look back on, and then what's something we can actually put into practice with this to help us not do it again. If that's an effort deal, we can do some pursuit drill, or we can do whatever. If that's a certain kind of block that we struggled on in these big moments, that's what we'll work on. If it was whatever it was, run that drill, get your kids' attention, move on quickly. But you mentioned it. It's got to be about more than just one game. And so sometimes that's really tough if you lose a heartbreaker. One year we lost. I had a bunch of sophomores that started for me, so we knew. We kind of talked about it's going to be a rough year, but it still hurts when you're in it. So 1 year, this is our first 3 games of the year. Okay, so we lose the first one. We rough the punter on punt safe when the game's tied. We're about to get the ball back with 2 minutes to go. We rough them. We don't get the ball back. They go down and score. So that was loss 1. The second week, we drive down the field. It's a tie game. We're going to kick the game-winning field goal that hits the upright. So we go to overtime. They score, miss the extra point. So here we go. We're about to win this game. We have 2nd and goal at the 1, the 3rd and goal at the 1, and we false start. So that turned into not 3rd and goal at the 1 anymore, and we lost that game. Game 3, we missed a field goal to lose it. And I think somewhere around game 6 or so, they hit like a 40-yarder. It was just one of those years where it was back to back to back. But those kids came ready to work every Monday. I lost 20 pounds, so I know what physically it did to me. I'm hoping, though, kind of like our duck scenario, where I was hopefully able to keep a good base in front of the kids. We did hold that group together. That group didn't win a lot of games, but the next year they did. And the next year they went 8-4, most ones we'd ever had at that point. So holding it together sometimes isn't just from a game to a game. It's from a season to a season, and understanding what you're dealing with is important as a coach. So, if you're starting a bunch of ninth graders and 10th graders, you're probably going to lose a bunch of games. Just kind of get ready for that, but build for what's coming. If you get a bunch of seniors, man, that's really tough because, it's kind of your last run with them. But my advice to any coach would be, by Monday's practice, that game needs to be out of your system, and it definitely needs to be out of your team's system if you're going to have any chance of winning the next one.
Yep. Coach Collins, how do you move on quickly after a loss?
Like you said don't watch that film. I don't think we ever showed the boys that film from Ada. I don't think we talked about the game. Come Monday, it was all whoever was the next week. I went home and I think I watched that film 3 times that weekend. Like, I wanted to know where I messed up. What did I do? Where did I not have them ready? And I think that also leads into your discussing your mistakes comment. Week 3, we took a loss, and I thought we were going to go out there and compete with a team. Last year, we were 2-0. I think it's the first time Stillwell had been 2-0 for I don't know how long, 10 years or something. And we take an L, and a pretty bad L. And it was one of those games that I thought it was going to be a competitive ball game. I thought going into it, it was going to be real close. And I think we ended up losing by 4 scores, maybe. I told the kids at the end of the game, before we even got in the locker room, like, guys, this one's on me. I failed to have you ready for what was going to go on here. And I'm not going to do that again. Like, we're not, as a coaching staff, we're going to have you ready for the next games. We've learned from this. We're going to learn more from it this weekend. And I think having that openness with them, some of those kids are already thinking it anyway. And I think if they see you willing to take some ownership of it, that sets a standard for the team. I think I read it in a Harvard business, like, leadership book, that they talked about people who turn companies around pass on all of the credit and they take on all of the blame as the leadership. And I think that's really part of what we've got to do, especially those real close games. Guys, I screwed up too, and here's where it's at. Because if you just come in and hammer them about their mistakes all the time, that's going to get real old, and they're not going to have much faith in you if you giving off that air that you're infallible and that they've made all the mistakes. But they see you willing to accept that responsibility, that accountability for it. I think that sets the expectation and the standard that it's okay for them to accept it. Man, I missed that block, and that play didn't work because of me. And we learn to take that on and move on. And I think that's one of the biggest things you can teach them that hopefully carries on way past the game of football, is being able to take accountability for yourself and be able to move on after that fact and not let that weigh you down.
And I think a lot of times too, you both have mentioned it, being accountable in front of your kids is a very powerful thing. And here's where it's powerful. If I'm willing to admit what I did wrong, I can say, guys, this was a horrible play call. Y'all made me look good because this guy did this. This was a great play call, and y'all screwed it up. And now you have the authority and the trust to be able to say that to him and not be some arrogant jerk that thinks he's always right, because you would admit when you're wrong. But also, hey, guys, no, we had the right defense called here. We just didn't make a play. Right. But if that's all you ever say and you don't mention, well, man, they caught us in a bad coverage, or it's a give and a take, and I think that a lot of times as coaches, your generation, younger generations, I think coaches are willing to admit they made mistakes, but that also gives you the authority now to correct someone else, to say, yeah, no, we were right here and we messed this up.
One last thing I want to make as a point here, and that's, if you do this wrong, I feel like you may not ever be able to move on, and that you can't start making a mockery or pinpointing the kid you're already trying to hide. So your tougher ones, maybe they can take a little coaching, right? You can, maybe moving on is saying, look, quarterback, I gave you 3 reads, you made 1, you pulled it down to try to run it, and you got a sack, and it cost us the game. Maybe that's even a conversation you have in private, like you have him in or a leadership council or whatever, and y'all are talking, yeah, that sucks, let's move on. But if you start picking on the cat you already knew couldn't do the job, but you have to put 11 kids on the field, the kids know. The kids know who's out there it's not supposed to be. They know who they're already covering for, and now you want to start pinpointing that cat. That's probably not going to work well for you now or on the next loss or the next. When you talk about stacking them, I think that could happen pretty quick. All right, Coach, let's move on to our what not to do as a coach period. It's a pretty good one tonight, so why don't you go ahead and tell us what our lesson is here?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I'm going to give you a few of these cliches that really drive me insane, but I've heard coaches say this. This is my do not do. Do not compare a football loss to a death. Like, that drives me insane. Like, I understand you feel sick that you lost, and it's a horrible feeling because I've been through that. It's a freaking game. I'm sorry. It's a game. It's not the death of a spouse or someone else. There's so much more important things in life than losing a game. So I know it stinks and it's okay to feel horrible, but please stop the comparisons of football to death. And I'll give you a few more. Please stop the comparisons of football to war. It's not war. You're not going to war. I know we use war terms like trenches and blitz because that's what we do, but it's not. And Daniel, you being a soldier, I hope you can relate to this. It makes me sick to hear people kind of compare it to going to war. No, you're not. You're going to play a game that does test a lot of characteristics and character traits that are important, and I'm not minimizing that, but it's not war, okay? Or when they call them going to grind. No, you're not. Going to grind is working 12 hours a day and working overtime so you can feed your kids. That's grinding. Working out in a weight room and playing a game is that. It's working out in a weight room and playing a game. Grinding is when you are scraping the bottom of the barrel so you can put food on the table. So there's all these cliches that drive me insane, but the one with losing really kind of got to me because I've heard people say, when you lose, it should feel like a death. No, it shouldn't, and you should check your priorities because you're really screwed up if that's what you think. Sorry.
I think we've lost the ability to describe things that are hard without some of those terms you brought up. That's what it is. We've lost the ability to just say, man, I'm going to do a really difficult thing, and it is weightlifting, and I'm going to go to practice. 2-a-days suck. They are very hard, and I'm kind of glad they're going away. Even as a coach, like I don't want to go stand in the heat for that much time twice a day either. Okay, so. But you're right. We've got some cliche things that we don't. I mean, we're all guilty. Even I'm guilty of, trying to put some rah-rah in the kids before we go out, and sometimes it is hard to think like, what is this like? It's, you know what I mean. So you start that war comparison, or that it's just you want to be a family, you want to be a unit, and you want to go take on another unit, and it's in we end up saying battle, right, instead of just in a game. So no, those are good ones to cut out for sure. Well, before we start closing out of here, Coach Collins, you got any closing comments on taking losses, my man?
Just the one thing that I would reiterate, especially younger coaches, guys with kids, maybe just you're not even have kids yet, just a wife at home. Don't take it home with you. And that's absolutely coming from a place that I've taken plenty of losses home with me. And, it made that whole weekend bad. The part of that moving on and being able to go into that next week, you need to go home and kind of separate yourself from that loss a little, because there's going to be another game. That don't let that loss carry on and drag down that whole season, and especially don't care to come home with you and carry down that life away from the field and the field house.
Yeah, I'd say too, don't let you mention it. One way as a coach, we make one loss into two is we start going to the world of fear. You failed once as a coach. What am I doing wrong? And then you start living in that world and coaching from a place of fear instead of coaching from a place of aggression. Like, I want to lose some games, but I want to lose games with the mindset of we're playing to win, not we're hoping we don't lose. Right. So be careful if you've gone through a couple of these tough losses that you don't get stuck in that bad mindset. And it's hard. It's really easy to say, but it's really hard. Every coach, I just watched the Gator documentary with Urban Meyer talking about doubting himself. Probably one of the greatest runs in football history. Well, the Gators had, and I know I'm biased, but one of the greatest runs there, and that guy's talking about doubting himself. So we all do, but try not to come from a place of doubt when you're in those games. Come from a place of aggression.
All right. Social media, where can we find you at, Coach Collins?
On X at Coach B Collins, and my email is coachbeaucollins@gmail.com.
Awesome. I don't know if anybody will reach out, but maybe they will. You guys feel free to reach out to Coach Collins. he's done some pretty cool things over in Prairie Grove, Arkansas, mixing the gun tee system and then the spread that he got added to that, and he's thrown it into a wing tee system. So it's like, it's beautiful. He's masterminding some crazy stuff over there with me.
Well, they hung 49 on someone last week, so it's working, whatever it is. So
There you go. I am at Coach Chambo OK on the Twitter /X machine. And then you can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. And Coach Simpson, where are you at, sir?
I'm too old to say at X, so I'm gonna say at Twitter. I'm at FP Coach Simpson. My email is fpcoachsimpson@gmail.com, or you can find me in all the different Facebook groups.
Awesome. The podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.